so many amazing startups happened like in the last 15 years built by millennials, but it was because they found something in the market that they themselves like were missing, and then they created a company to like fulfill that need.
Today we have Chelsea Dubois here with us. Chelsea is a highly accomplished creative director with over a decade of experience in the field. Currently at Razorfish, she oversees a creative team, develops innovative digital marketing campaigns, and has an intensive background in copywriting. She has worked with numerous high-profile clients in fashion, beauty, and consumer goods, and has won numerous industry awards. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Would love to jump into what you do over at Razorfish.
So I work on a team of about 30 people, but the creative team is a little smaller. It's like maybe 9 to 10 people. We work on a CPG brand, lots of brands within that umbrella. Yeah, just day-to-day creative stuff. There's big projects, small projects. We focus primarily on digital stuff, kind of a mix of everything. Our team is very collaborative, so it's not necessarily, such a structure of, who's above who. It's just everyone working together. And,
collectively.
Yeah.
And I know we just worked together on a project, and you have your art directing creative director partner, Estee.
Yes.
Are you guys always partners on all the projects you do, or only some of the accounts?
She's my main partner. She's my ride or die. She's the best. We've been together for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, which is pretty rare.
Yeah.
But it's like we found each other, it clicked, and we wanted to keep working together.
And have you guys, in those 7 years, has it always been at Razorfish?
Always at Razorfish, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, before Razorfish, I was a freelancer,
Mm-hmm.
and just bopping around different agencies, and they kind of just pair you up randomly. It's not really considered like who's the best at working together. But at Razorfish, there was this awesome creative manager, and he had this like matchmaking ability where he could find two people and put them together, and he did that for us. He was like, I think you would be a really good team. And then it turns out we have so many things in common. She's like one of my best friends now. Yeah, we're sort of a mind meld thing at this point. Finish each other's sentences, kind of weird.
That's
weird
so
stuff.
cool.
But
What's the process? Like the creative process of how you two work together?
Usually we'll get briefed. We'll do sort of like our own little debrief, talking about, what we think about the project, some initial things that came to mind. Maybe we'll share like some inspiration or imagery with each other, and then we kind of go off into our own separate worlds and think about it on our own, do like our own ideation, and then we'll come together and just from there just work pretty collaboratively. I think there are some times where she's writing stuff, other times where I have a visual idea, so there is some crossover. It is sort of seamless in that way. Some teams might work differently. It's very like, you're the copywriter, you're the art director, that's what you stick to. For us, we do a lot of weaving in and out of each other's worlds.
Yeah.
Even on, it's just like Instagram for some reason is a great way for us to just share ideas. Like we're constantly DMing each other, like, what about this? Or what about, look at this type treatment? Or like, look at this, the way this is cut, or, so that's really sort of a fun thing that happens in the background when we're not in the office working. We're constantly doing that with each other.
Yeah.
For different projects.
So when you guys started working together, you were physically in an office.
Yeah. And then, 2020 changed everything.
Yep.
I loved working in the office. That was just such a good thing for me. I loved getting up every morning, taking that journey into the office, getting to like sort my thoughts, be in the office. That's when like, the work day started and ended, and then coming home and kind of putting that part of my life away and having my at-home life. And the office was really fun. Like we have such like a weird, fun group of people. And we just, play pranks on each other. It's the goof troop over there. But I had gone on maternity leave before COVID happened and the office shut down. So I was kind of put my stuff away in my desk, and then I never came back for like a year and a half.
Wow.
And then when I did go back, it's like the office was a ghost town. But now, there is a little bit more of an office culture. But I I moved away from our home base, and now I just work primarily at home.
Since you're both remote now, how do you guys work together? You guys like constantly on the phone, constantly on FaceTime?
Constantly on Teams.
Yeah.
Like constantly.
Yeah.
It's just become so second nature to us.
Yeah.
It's seamless now. I mean, before it was a huge, sort of a huge transition for us, but
learning curve.
Big learning curve, but we work on Teams. We start at the beginning of the pandemic, we started on some different platforms, but now it's like, you know, the corporate Microsoft situation.
Yeah.
So we're on the video like constantly with each other.
Yeah.
Do you feel there's is there like a dynamic shift in how the creativity works now though, since you're more like communicating remotely than like being in the office, being able to like bounce ideas off each other and stuff like that?
Creatively, I think we're still working really well together. For me personally, I loved that time to like decompress after a day, or, you know, see the world around me, think about, you know, projects like in the world, be around like other humans. And I really got a lot creatively from that. So for me personally, it's like I have to find that other places now. Whereas like in New York City, it was sort of like just like life happening around you all the time. And then now I'm sort of a little bit more siloed in my home. And I have to like figure out how to like find those like little pockets of inspiration or ways to decompress after work. Between like me and Estee, like we still have our same vibe, and we make sure to see each other every few months at least. And that really helps like reinvigorate like the connection. And I try to do that too with like the team in general. Like it's really helpful to get that in-person time, even if it's just a day or two. Like when we go on a shoot, like we'll all come together, and it's so important, I think.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And can you kind of touch on like how you got into the industry, how you became a creative director, like all of that from the very beginning?
Sure. So after college, I was an English major, so loved all things writing, reading. I did a lot of like my own writing on the side. I always knew I wanted to be in a creative field. I wasn't really sure what that was. Didn't know what it meant to be a creative in advertising really. But I had, series of fateful encounters. Ended up working at Saatchi in LA as an associate project manager, which was like so random, but also like it was a really good way of seeing how an agency works, you know, because as a project manager, you're going to the different departments, you're meeting all the people, you're kind of like sitting in meetings, listening to how it's, you know, it's all being cooked up. And that was a really good introductory step into advertising. And being a project manager wasn't in my nature. It was something I had to like try really hard to do. And I actually really like it. Like it felt uncomfortable being so like, I'm the one that's like organized. I'm the one that needs to like move this project forward. But a lot of my friends were in the creative department. I just was so drawn to that world. And, you know, back then there was a very specific way to get into a creative department as a copywriter, art director. There was like the 2-year portfolio school, whether that's Creative Circus, Miami Ad School, whatever it is. You build your portfolio, you get an internship, you work at a big agency, and then you kind of make your way in that way. So for me, it was a little not traditional at the time, but I saw that I like loved the creative department. This creative director took me under his wing, let me write headlines like on the side, kind of started to bring me into different briefings. Saatchi was such an amazing place that helped foster that interest. They were totally fine that I did my project management job, but then they also let me explore this other department a little bit, get my toes wet in the creative department. So then I started getting these like invited to some briefings just for fun. And then eventually sold some work. So
wow,
that was a really good like sort of pivotal moment where this is something I felt like confident, like I could do this. Definitely had to pay my dues and do my time like working that way. I mean, but it was like a little bit different because I had this like day job of project manager, and then I would do stuff at night on the side, and then eventually fully integrated into the creative department.
So
Yeah.
you were at Saatchi, and then you went freelance for a little bit?
Yeah, I was at Saatchi for a while. And then right when I was hired as a junior copywriter, I actually decided to take a sabbatical and move to India.
Wow.
For 6 months. And I did some social cause, working for a nonprofit and helping with their like digital donation strategy and kind of helping with content.
Why India?
It just my boyfriend at the time had also worked there, so it was like for the same organization.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it was like, you know, a little plan that we hatched. And then I came back to Saatchi, which was so nice of them to have me back after I was like peace for 6 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, I took a leap of faith and did freelance. And I freelanced a couple places in LA, and then we moved to New York, and I freelanced there for 4 years. So, you know, worked at tons of different agencies, big, small, you know, experiential, you know, traditional agencies, all of that. And then landed at Razorfish and met my creative soulmate Estee and decided to stay. And I've really it's been a totally different experience working at Razorfish, because with freelance you're kind of pulsing in to either help, you know, solve a specific problem, fill in for somebody who's out, you know, fight some fire, or, you know, it's not like you're not a part of something. Whereas at Razorfish, I felt like, okay, here's a place I can actually learn about how to build and how to be invested in something beyond just like, oh, my 2-week gig or my month gig is up, and then I never think about any of this again.
And how long have you been at Razorfish now for?
Maybe like 7 years.
So okay, so pretty much right when you got there, you and Estee became creative partners.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And then our first day was we both flew to Chicago to work on a pitch. So we were like strangers that, you know,
it's a good way
in a city. Yeah.
To build a relationship.
Yeah. And it was the day that Trump won the election.
Wow. That's 7 years ago. That's
and
crazy.
I was like, a disaster. And she's like, you know, who's this crazy person who's like crying? But no, it was totally like a bonding experience.
Wow.
And such a funny way to start a partnership, but
wow,
it's worked out.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm like interested in what are the differences you've seen as like being a creative at like a super small agency versus like being at a big agency, and like the dynamic of how that works.
Well, every agency has their own process, and it's just, you never know. You don't get a heads up. Like when day one, you're kind of like, all right, you have to kind of be very, very fluid, go with the flow. And then if you're partnered with a random person, what's their working style, right? Like, how am I going to fit into this? That was my approach, is like, okay, I'm going to be like water. Like what does everyone need? What does everyone want? And I'll figure out my way in. But, you know, smaller agencies, it's like there's not a lot of levels, not a lot of layers. So maybe you're working like directly with the, you know, group creative director. Larger agencies, it's like there's so many steps to get an idea through. That would be a main difference. Timelines are longer, budgets are bigger. So there's just, so many different variables. But I would say overall, like the process is just so different. Like, at some agencies, maybe there's the expectation is, you know, you're just the presenter of the work, like to everyone. Or other agencies are, maybe your creative director presents your work, or, you know, maybe there's a proofreader that the stuff needs to go through, or a product person. Whereas other agencies, it's like it's on you to figure out, you know, all of those details. So, is
there a type of advertising work that you prefer to work on?
I love writing scripts.
Cool.
Yeah. I love it. I love the initial, you know, campaign idea. Yeah. You know, bigger thing. That's, you know, sort of that heady thinking. Yeah. And then just I think that's my favorite part. And then just writing scripts, and I love production. I love being on set. I love working with directors and casting. Like, I love every step of that process. So that's where I'm in my happy place.
Being that you love script writing and being on set and working with directors and casting, do you ever think about like directing, or do you write screenplays for like yourself on the side for fun?
I haven't. It does feel like what a dream, but
yeah,
you know, it is cool. Like in my position though, it is nice because there's so many amazing directors out there, and just to like work with and, you know, get a glimpse into their mind with like the treatments, and you know, it's like we get to touch so many different things, whereas like a director might just come in, they do their shoot day, their job, and then they kind of are like, okay, on to my next project. Whereas we stay with it, right? We're like a part of like from concept creation, like post, like doing all of the editing. I love that too, you know? So it is a very cool job in the sense that it's your baby. You get to see it come to life, and then you really have like the beginning and the end to experience. Whereas I feel like directors, like they have their own set of amazing stuff, but I have thought about it. Yeah. I haven't acted on it.
Definitely something there.
Yeah.
Obviously, like you know, Marisha comes from like agency background.
Yes.
Like as an art director. So not the craziest
thing. I know. Yeah. It's definitely like a path. I've heard directors. I guess I've also had a creative director who used to be a director, but then chose to be a creative director, which is kind of a, I don't know, not as common.
It makes sense. I mean, it's a little more consistent, you know, because directing is so competitive with so many directors out there and bidding on so many jobs and can't win them all. And so I could see why somebody would want to go the creative director route.
No, I'm so envious of directors. They're amazing to me. They really are. I'm like,
yeah. It must be so interesting for you to like, you spend so much time on a project, concepting it, selling it through, and then when you're in the early phases of working with a director, like getting their take on what your concept is.
Like that day where you get the treatments in, it's like Christmas. You're like,
yeah.
Cannot wait to open this.
It's so cool.
It's very fun.
I was going to say, just speaking on like treatments for a minute, I'm curious, like from your end, like what makes a good treatment? What's that whole process like when a director submits a treatment? What are those like internal conversations on like figuring out like which one is our favorite, who's the right person for this job? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think a couple things are always talked about. Like, of course, you have that person who you gravitate towards creatively. You're like, this is the wildest, like most beautiful thing I've seen. But then there's like all these other things at play. Like, is this the brand, or is this the director's world, or is this the brand, like the brand's world? Because you're never gonna win if the treatment doesn't feel like the brand. And it's all about pushing the brand, seeing like where creatively they can go. But you kind of have to think about, how are the clients going to receive this, and how can we best support this director's vision and, you know, sell this to the client as being the right way to go. So I don't know, you kind of have to balance a little bit of practicality with that like wild creativity that comes back in treatments. And then also like loving like just directors that bring something new. You just spent all this time writing the script, which, you know, can be so much better, like seen through a director's eyes. And then when the treatment says the exact same thing that you wrote, or that you said on, you know, the initial calls, you're like, it's just nice to see that like extra thing. Like, what is that extra thing that you can really help make this better?
Yeah, they really think about it and plus it up and help bring your idea to life.
Give a point of view to it.
Yeah. And that's, you know, we always like love that. I think a lot of directors do that, but, you know, sometimes you kind of just get exactly your words like put back in with beautiful photos like back to you. And it's nice to get something a little bit fresh, a different perspective. Just vibes. Like, I know it's like, sounds like silly, but this person is going to be who you're working with for the next month,
a temporary marriage.
Yeah. And there's going to be some stuff that we have to get through together, or problems we have to solve together. Like, is that going to go well?
Yeah. Are we going to be good partners?
You can really like sense that, you know, and sometimes you make, you know, after the shoot, you're like, we made the right decision. Yeah. You know,
and sometimes
you're like,
might make them.
God. You're like going back. You're like, what if we chose the other person? What would have happened? But no, I mean, in general, it's, you know, such a labor of love for everyone. And
you ever think it comes back to like on that first call, you're like, oh, that's the person. I know that's who we're going to go with, like they're going to nail it?
No, I mean, it's really surprising how you think what after that first call, like who's going to be your choice. And then also, budget is this whole other thing that, it's there's people who deal with the money that I have no control over. And at the end of the day, like my favorite person or, our favorite person might be just their ideas are so big that it's just not achievable.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of a hard pill to swallow, but you're like, oh my gosh, like that person, I didn't even know if they were listening, but then look at this beautiful thing that they brought back. It really is based on the treatment, and then combine that with the financial stuff, like with the clients, how the clients will receive it. And then, is this someone you want to work with?
Yeah.
How does that play, like that dynamic of, obviously there's the treatment on one side, then there's a budget on the other side. Like, what are those conversations internally to figure out, like, okay, so for client, we're going to present we can't do our favorite idea because it's $400,000 too much. Like, we're going to go with the middle. Like, how do those conversations happen, and like how involved, or are you not even involved in like hearing what's happening behind the scenes? Like, while we're doing a treatment, we're on the phone with the like agency producer all day, like talking through stuff and figuring out like what's going on during that time with you.
We're just crossing our fingers and hoping the conversations are going well. And we're just like, hey, we got a number? We got a number yet? And, I think just transparency, like with the client too. It's like, we're never going to, not show them somebody because they're too expensive. It's like, look, this is what you can get if you spend a little more. Like, that's always a conversation that happens. But sometimes our first choice is the finances match, and it's perfect.
Is that like a conversation though between the whole team of like going through it and like deciding, let's present the client option 3 as our first?
Yep. And like, before we go into a client meeting, I mean, this goes with anything. We always have a recommendation. Sometimes you don't share your recommendation unless they ask for it, because sometimes you share your recommendation and they end up choosing something completely different. So it's a funny little dance.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
So you always have a recommendation, but you don't always share your recommendation.
Unless it's something we're super passionate about, and like, absolutist, like this is the way to do it. But those are the conversations we have, right? It's a little bit of strategy. Like, how are we gonna?
That's crazy that a client will pay all this money for an agency, and then it's like, I don't want to give them a recommendation because we know they're not going to want it.
I think our clients generally, like, they're really great and trust us, will hear us out, and they're always willing to to be pushed a little. And I think that especially with that process, I do feel like they trust us a lot, because we're the ones who are boots on the ground on the shoot day, and from their perspective, they're like, okay, as long as you get my spot the way you sold it, then great. If you think you can do that, then great.
Or there were like heated debates on like, no, we got to go with option 2, or like we got to present option 1 as the like preference? Does it ever get to that point, or is it?
No, nothing heated, never, because I really do feel like our team is on the same page a lot of the time, or we'll be sort of like between two, and we're kind of like, okay, let's let the gods decide, like what's gonna.
Yeah, and if you have a recommendation and the client ends up wanting to go with who's not your recommendation, and they're like, I don't know, maybe you're not super confident, then will you voice that to the client?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Yeah.
If it is a strong feeling and a strong opinion, like 100%.
Yeah.
Because you have to, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you have to protect them.
Yeah. And there has been times where it's like we've made a decision maybe because we thought it was in the client's best interest, but maybe creatively we wanted like something different, and the client ended up like choosing the thing that we wanted creatively. And it's such a happy surprise when that happens,
Yeah.
I can think of a time specifically where we're like, let's just do it in a closed set because it's safer. And one director had pitched doing it in a closed set. Then there was another director that pitched doing like real world outside on a beach. We're like, that's wild. That's crazy. Like, what if there's wind and sand and storms? Like, no. And our client was like, let's do it. Let's ride. Like, let's try and do it in the real world. We're like, okay.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that was cool.
I'd like to even just take it a step back real quick, and like, so now you have a brief, and you're ready to like try and find the director for it, I'm assuming going into it, you probably have like a couple like North Star directors you'd want for the project, but what's that process look like of like trying to find the director? Do you mainly put like more on the producer to hit up like their connects and like the reps, or do you do outreach on your end? What does that look like? And then what's the system of narrowing it down to the short list?
Initially, the producer, we trust producers to, give lots of range and links based on what they think would work. And that's usually a pretty extensive list, to be honest. And it's a lot of like selects come from that initial list. If still we feel like we haven't found like the right top people, we'll do our own little digging. Production companies we've worked with in the past that really liked, we'll go look, at their rosters, just look at music videos, who did that, who, do our own research. But initially it is the agency producer that provides us with, links basically.
And then you're getting a list of how many directors? Anywhere
from 20 to 50. Cast a wide net, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the thing. And then we'll watch, lots of reels, have lots of conversations on our end. I think there's a lot of conversation that goes into who's bubbling up to the top as the right people. And then we kind of check in with our clients too about who is bubbling up to the top, so that when we are in the treatment phase, there's no surprises.
Yeah.
So we're like we like to just be as open and communicative about that stuff.
Is that just you and your partner mainly going through it and like going back and forth, like, no, I love him, no, I love him?
Yeah, it's me and Estee. We do that, and then we'll loop Jamie in, who's our boss, and we have lots of conversations with her. Ultimately, we are all on the same page. There is some, because they're both art director backgrounds and I'm copywriter backgrounds. I feel like sometimes they see eye to eye, where I'm like, oh, but this person is like the story, and and they're like, but the visuals, and there's always that classic back and forth.
And what are you usually looking for when you're looking at like these 50 different ideas? Like, I know some agency people, it's like if there's a giraffe in the spot, they want to see a director who has a giraffe on their reel.
I think it just comes down to the story. Like, is it a story you want people to laugh at? Like, are you laughing when you watch this director's work? If you're not laughing, like, it's not your person.
Yeah.
Is the concept just all about like gorgeous visuals? There's a clear person who's right for that. It really just comes down to, what are you making? So if there's that one spot that you like love, that really feels like you connect to, that's enough. I don't think like,
do you think one spot could do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes even in the, like, we get the reels, but then we'll go on the portfolio sites and like dig deeper, and their Instagrams, and we become like a little stalkery.
Yeah.
Because you just get like such a richer picture of all their work and their style.
Do you and Estee, or whoever the creative team might be, I guess you and Estee, because you guys have been working together for 7 years, do you ever maybe not see eye to eye on a treatment? Like, maybe, you get your 3 treatments in, or if it's a triple bid, you love one and Estee loves one, and I don't know, like, does that ever happen? Are you guys usually like on the same page?
Trouble in paradise?
Yeah.
No. No, normally we're able to like talk it through, state my case. She states her case.
Cool.
Are there certain directors that use ghost writers or ghost art directors to build these treatments, or how does that work on your end?
Yeah. So every director is unique in their own way.
Yeah.
Like, we have directors on the roster who will do everything from copy, design, layout, putting the whole thing together. Some directors who will only write the copy and then bring somebody else on to pull the visuals and put the deck together. Some directors who are vice versa. Some directors who will totally leave it to hiring a copywriter and hiring a design team to put the whole thing together. My personal opinion is that as a director, you have a vision, you have a voice, you should at least write the copy, at least the first pass. And if you want to bring in a ghost copywriter to clean up the copy and make it better, stronger, whatever, cool. But your voice as a director should come across in the treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big thing for me. If a director doesn't want to do all the copy, I will at least push for them to write at least the first pass.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there definitely is a huge part of our industry where, ghost copywriters for directors treatments and ghost visualist who will pull visuals, references, and put the deck together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know. I've heard stories where it's like a director is so busy that the company will just like hire someone, tell them to figure it out and put it together, and the director might not even see it until they're presenting. Like right before, maybe they might not even. They'll just
So
present it and just
stressful.
be like acting the whole
I
time.
cannot imagine.
Yeah.
Also, or like feeling like, oh, I'm signing up to make this. Like, don't I care about?
Totally. You have to be. You're here. You're pretty much. You're here to direct and tell a story. You should be passionate about the film that you're making, and why you're making it, and all those reasons. And I think like your passion goes a long way in helping you win the job. You know, because I think there's a lot of directors who maybe don't even care about directing advertising because they'd rather be directing their own feature film, whatever it is.
Right. So it's more like side thing for them versus their primary.
I think it depends.
Yeah.
So
it's like you have to, but at the end of the day, it's like you have to be passionate about what you're doing. You know, like we're passionate about what we're doing from the top. Like directors should be like everyone should be. You know, I also like look at what we do as like such a cool thing. We should be so thankful and grateful for being able to do what we do. It's like we're not, you know, we don't have boring desk jobs, you know, working in, I don't know, something boring. Can't think of anything.
Insurance.
Sure, yeah. And it's like we're not curing cancer. Like we're having fun. We're creating content. We're creating advertising for brands that want to be cool or whatever it is, want to, you know, reach an audience. So I look at it as something that's like cool and fun to do.
Well, you can definitely like, I love what you said about doing the first pass, because you can sense like when it's their voice, you know, and that really helps, like to know that there was a lot of care and thought put into it.
Yeah.
Definitely helps sell it more.
Yeah.
Have you ever like read a treatment or they presented one and you're just like, that's not them. They didn't do that. They don't know what the heck's going on.
Definitely. Yeah, you can sense it. I mean, how could you not? I mean, it's like opening it up for the first time in the meeting. Like, I mean, unless you're some like genius presenter, like there's going to be some moments where it's like apparent that maybe that wasn't your voice.
Yeah.
But
I think that first call where we're getting briefed and the director are getting briefed by you on the creative team is so crucial, because we have to, I think it's so important for the director to ask questions about not only the creative and why you pitch this creative to the client and why they bought it and all that stuff, but also like, why did you choose me as a director? What did you see in my work? I think all that stuff is really important. Maybe the director already has some thoughts and ideas that they want to spitball with you on that call and kind of gauge your interest and thoughts on those things. So then when we go back and we're working on the treatment, that first call, the treatment, and that follow-up call are all so important, of course.
Yeah.
But I think like really taking advantage of like us getting downloaded on that first call, asking all the questions, just, you know, really getting a good understanding is huge.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm always so amazed when directors are able to just come up with spontaneous ideas that are amazing on those calls. Like that's always really fun to witness.
Yeah.
What was your question though about like ChatGPT or AI or something you want to talk about?
No. It's such a trend right now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts on ChatGPT, it's something that, like, you know, the industry is talking about a lot and our agency is talking about a lot, and how will this like affect our jobs? And of course there's that initial like sort of resistance to new stuff, which, you know, I'm having strongly.
Have you tried utilizing it at all?
And we've, you know, even talking to some strategists on my team, like, you know, they're like, maybe this is a cool, you know, I understand people like want to use it to write their emails and make their lives more efficient, and, you know, maybe writing isn't your thing, so this tool can really help you like move through life in a way that's less stressful or easy. But in terms of being a copywriter, like I'm so like used to, like there's a muscle in my brain that's like used to like the process, like that first round of writing, the first round of headlines. Like I wouldn't want an AI bot to come up with that, because that first round is so critical, and it's like the legs you stand on for the other rounds. Like that's never going to be the best round. That's always going to be like the lowest, you know, hanging fruit. But you end up getting to a place, and I don't know if you'd be able to get to that place if you didn't do that first part yourself.
Yeah.
So I know that it's going to be a part of our lives. I know that it's we're going to have to figure out how to work with it.
Definitely.
But for myself, it is, I have a lot of hesitancy and a lot of skepticism, and just for my own process, like kind of feeling that it could, I don't know if it would make it better.
Yeah. I'd be curious, just from you being a creative, like if you ever have like a creative block and you don't know where to go, like if you tried using it just like spark ideas and see if like something's stuck, and it's like, oh, if I took that aspect of it, which is interesting, and I twisted it with this creative idea I just had.
But isn't that why we have like partners and bosses and strategists and I don't know, like I love, because that's the part that you build, right? Like that's the connections you make, are those like initial brainstorming sessions. But yeah, I mean, to your point, like I think that's a great example of a use case for a creative. It's like, I'm stuck, I don't feel like thinking anymore. Like what can this thing give me? And how can I use it?
I think it's definitely here to stay, and I think it can be scary, but I do think we should look at it as just like a useful and helpful tool, and not necessarily like the only way to work. But like you were saying earlier, like I'm not the best writer, so it's really helpful for me to like brain dump, write my own thing, and then like put it in Chat GPT and be like, hey, like clean this up, make it better, structure it, and then for me to like pull parts from it that help make my writing stronger,
like an editing tool.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and the visuals that you're able to make are just
crazy.
That's insane. So that I think is totally.
Did you see the commercial that Ryan Reynolds wrote for Mint Mobile?
No.
With it? He, like, the commercial was him he pretty much read the prompt back that he gave Chat GPT on like what the commercial should be, and it wrote the commercial. And
well, and I think that's, he's so great because of the like timeliness. He's able to make things really fast as a reaction towards stuff that's happening, which I always like love. But yeah, it's like almost like the concept of it, like of AI, is just like there's going to be a certain point where you can't like talk about the cool thing being the AI thing. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's such a buzz thing that it makes sense that that's his concept. But
totally,
after that's played out for a while, it's
I think it's just it's definitely the hype for right now, but I think it'll slowly
weave itself into every day.
Did you see the Microsoft thing where they tried to break the code, and it was saying that it wants to be alive, and like it wants to like get back at these people, and like wants to be free. Like someone's able to get in the code, like figure out its like code name. And it started saying like really dark things, like I want to be alive, I want to connect with people.
Was this Bing? The new Bing?
Yeah.
Wow.
That one's crazy.
That's scary.
Yeah, that's where I'm like, it's not there
Pros
yet.
and cons to everything.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I like humans too much.
Yeah, for sure.
Are there, from your company, are there like any legal implications that like they brought up about using it, or it's still like such a gray area they say just stay away from it for
now?
Our
company it's definitely it's a hot topic. To be honest, I don't know about all of that and like how our clients feel about it, and I think it's sort of uncharted territory. Everyone's figuring it out. I'm sure there's conversations happening, but I'm not a part of those.
Totally. I'm curious too with just like with the like recession coming and all that type of stuff, and or we're in whatever anyone says, who knows anymore. But like what are brands saying, or what are brands looking for at this time? Is it like what's the most cost effective thing we can make? Like let's just keep pushing. Like I'm just curious what you've seen on your end or heard.
It's I think our team has always been really good at figuring out, like, there are some projects that have bigger budgets, some projects that have smaller budgets, but for us, like, we are really good at figuring out how to get the most from a budget. If there are, budget cuts, or they're not spending as much on marketing in the past because of this impending
Whatever this thing is.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't, to be honest, I haven't felt it too much this year. I mean, normally we're really busy in Q1. And that was sort of like hasn't really ramped up until like now. So everything just like, I don't know. It's like the projects were maybe not as intense this year, but we're all still busy. We all still have the same clients, everything.
How many accounts are you on at like right now or at any given time?
I work probably on 3 to 4 brands at a time.
Okay.
Sometimes just one, depending on how big the project is. Just resourcing, you know. But I've worked on a lot of the same brands for the past, you know, few years. So I have that connection to them.
Mm-hmm.
How's that? Does it just work like you just get an email from your boss like, hey, got a new job that just came in, we're putting you on it starting tomorrow?
Yeah. Or you'll just get a briefing in your inbox and you're like, okay, guess I'm doing that. No, but usually there's a heads up.
Got it.
And you get like a landscape of what your next few months will look like. I think that they try, like there's a lot of conversations that are tried to like kept separate from creatives. Like we can't handle it, but
like to protect you guys.
Protect us. But there's like a main resourcing meeting and everyone sort of like gets in a room and decides, okay, what projects are coming up? What's the teams that work well together? You know, where can we staff different people? What's brands that like they're really good at, or you know, there is some creatives who I feel like maybe connect better with certain brands than others. Or
I'm curious, do you prefer to work on beauty brands only, or is there certain categories or genres of brands that you prefer to work on, or like working on more than others?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think I can work on anything, try and create something. I don't necessarily need to be the target audience to sell this or to make an ad, but it's like I'm so much like happier and more passionate about it when it's a brand I feel like I have some love for, or that I can find. It's also easier to find a truth about the brand as well. Like even when you're working on a brand that doesn't feel like yourself, you have to find something about it that you connect with, or something that's true about it, because without that, it's, you know, it doesn't feel right, doesn't feel genuine, doesn't feel real, feels like you're just faking it in a way. But so I love working on brands that I feel personally connected with and that I would use in my own life.
Yeah.
And I think that's changing. You know, like when I was younger, I probably would have answered that question totally differently. And, you know, being a mom, like I would like love working on a brand that talks to moms. Like there's just so much insight I can pull from that, and so much personal experience, that it just makes it much more of like a richer creative place to go.
I'm curious, like what advice you'd have for somebody who dreams of doing what you're doing one day and being in your position, on what they could do or should do, or any general advice you might have. I
think there's so many ways to get into the industry now that wasn't the case in the past. But I mean, my advice would be to, I always say this to young copywriters, like bring options. Like don't just come in with just one option. Like try different ways in. Like when you're coming to the table with ideas, like I'm not saying bring 100, which I probably have done in the past, which is crazy, but you know, you have to have like an edit. You have to edit yourself, but also like bring options. Don't just come in with like one thing, because there could be something you're totally missing that you didn't bring, and you kind of miss out on that opportunity. But trying to get into the industry, I don't know, just be nice. Like it's really comes down to like enjoying like the people that you work with, feeling like safe and supported in a space, and like wanting to work with just nice people.
That's our biggest thing.
Yeah.
Like life's too short and stressful enough as is, and our industry it could get crazy at times. It's like we just want to work with people who are amazing at what they do professionally and are talented, but also have good attitudes and are nice and enjoyable to work with.
Yeah, and bringing that like, ability to, be curious, ask questions. Like people love that. Like people,
Mhm.
you know, want to teach and
Yeah.
show and share, and be a good listener,
Yeah.
because there's so much to learn. It takes years of experience to really feel that confidence. Every brand is different. There's like, you know, different styles of, you know, clients, and, you know, there's always something new to learn, and there's always a new way to figure out a challenge.
Earlier you touched on like Creative Circus, which is now distinct.
Yes, I know. I had some friends who went there.
Yeah, I feel like Miami Ad School is like the last, and not too sure how well they're doing.
Yeah, because a lot of I guess just it's part of grad school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you're just like a really good you know, you're an amazing social media presence, and you know it works, and
Mhm.
that's your ticket,
Yeah.
and that's how you get in. Yeah, it's like, what's your thing? Like, what's the thing that it's a lot of social stuff now. So
Yeah,
and
definitely.
there's a lot of people who are really good at it.
I'm curious too, you just touch on what's that process like. The job's booked, we're in production. What's the day-to-day conversations with the client, since like you're more of the middleman at that point in between, like communicating with the client, everything that's going on? What does that look like?
There's like a few different touch points where we are sharing with our client along the way. Our account team handles a lot of the day-to-day communication and updates them with like where we are in the process, and make sure they're like included and feeling good about, you know, everything that's going on. So there's the treatment, and then after that it's starting to approve like casting specs, wardrobe specs, set design. Just kind of depends on like the client and how, like, do you just send it over? Do you have like a bigger meeting where you present everything at once? Just kind of depends on the style. But all of those things are run through the client along the way.
Do
like
you ever have to get involved where the client's like, oh wait, we're doing this, and then like you have to come in and kind of like ease it and like explain to them?
Yeah, because out of context, like sometimes I understand how confusing it can be. Like we're so in it, we're so in the weeds during a production where, you know, you see one set design, for example, and you're like, oh, I get it. I get how this is going to fit into the story. But then the client just sees that one piece, and they're like, wait, where's everything else? Like, I don't understand it just like by itself. I need to see it in the whole. I need to see everything in order to approve this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of explaining, a lot of like, okay, like sharing with them like the process, getting in, like sharing details. It's a lot of communication to make them feel like safe, and that this is the vision that you're going to get, and it's going to be fine. Yeah. It's a lot of just like, it's going to be fine. Don't worry. Like, that's just a comp. That's not the actual color of the wall.
Like, yeah, for sure.
So there is that. Or with casting too, like just being on the same page with casting, because you want to make sure the director's happy. You want to make sure that the brand is happy. And a lot of the time the brand isn't involved in casting. So you're just hoping that after that session is over, that they're going to be on the same page as well.
Yeah.
And there has been some times where it's like, okay, no, we're not on the same page. We kind of have to go back to the drawing board, which is, you know, fine, because usually there's a lot of great options out there.
For sure.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you've been in situations where like the client approves a job and it's happening, but then like in the middle you realize that you don't think the client understood what they signed off on?
Might be a tiny detail where you're like, oh, like that's always been in the script. That's been in the script since the beginning, but it was sort of this like minor little thing. But overall, I think we have a pretty good relationship with our clients, and, you know, through like mood boards and storyboards, like they can really see it from the beginning. The best thing during production is just no surprises.
Yeah.
You know, for them, as long as they're not surprised, they feel in the loop, like things go much smoother.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of communication,
Yeah.
making sure everyone's on the same page and aligned on everything, for sure. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, like a strong, solid pre-production is everything.
Yeah.
Because then you go into the shoot, you know exactly what everything is, you know.
Is casting purely remotely now? Like, is all of your sessions that way?
Pretty, for the most part, it's been remote. There's been a couple in-person sessions recently. I feel like it's slowly starting to come back.
Do you think that's what directors prefer?
I think directors probably prefer to be in the room. I also think like everyone's all over the place these days.
Yeah.
So it's also kind of harder.
Yeah, just more efficient to do it
Yeah.
remotely. Like I wonder if you get more attendance because it's remote.
I think yeah, we probably are getting more options.
Yeah.
And more people because it is remote and people don't have to be, driving all around town from audition to audition.
So it just depends on
it depends on the project. Like, and it also depends, like we have a shoot in Colombia that we're about to do. And so we're casting out of the States. And it's like, well, we don't necessarily have to cast out of LA or New York. We can cast out of both. So it's like, we're not going to do those in person because we are casting LA and New York.
Because you're just going to fly the talent there no matter what.
Yeah. So like that is pretty much going to be remote. So it just kind of depends on all the variables of the project. And it's like, well, if we're going to shoot in LA, but the director's in New York, do we have enough money to bring the director to LA for an extra, 2 weeks earlier, for a week, you know what I mean? It's just like, it totally depends. But I think the remote thing has been helpful. There's pros to it. And just like we were saying earlier, there's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
Do you guys prefer to do in person on your end, on the creative end?
I'm such an in-person person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I agree.
I love it. I really do. I mean, even in the post process, like I love to be on the couch watching the edit,
Yeah, it's nice.
And also I feel like just so much more gets done in person.
Yeah.
I am very happy with the remote working situation in terms of like my life now and how it's set up. But for those key things, I think it's pretty helpful, and I think it just saves so much time.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Because you get full attention, I feel like.
Yeah. And when we were like, when it was early on pandemic days and we were doing shoots where we were on set and then clients were remoting in, like, it was really hard.
Yeah.
It's like, it's
because
just difficult.
you're waiting for feedback.
Yeah, you're waiting up for feedback to come in. Then
technical issues.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, maybe you're in a place that doesn't have great Wi-Fi for the stream. That was a whole thing. I'm so glad that's done. No, I definitely prefer to do everything in person. It's just like, I don't know. It's more streamlined. It's easier. It's more efficient. It's also like out of sight, out of mind. Like.
I'm so happy in-person shoots are back.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, being on set is like, it's such a fun thing.
Yeah.
It's like a field day.
Yeah.
It's like a field trip. Like, leave the office for a day. Well, not everyone's in the office anymore, but
yeah, you need those moments, you need those moments to just kind of celebrate what you do.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we think of things like, so intangibly, or like, it's so nebulous, like these ideas that we come up with that like never see the light of day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like something real.
Yeah.
It's just like, I think it's very necessary.
You just made me think of a question. Do you ever re-pitch a concept that maybe didn't make it before, if you're allowed to say that?
There's like a couple of concepts where like we can't let them go.
Yeah, you like love
they're
them.
They're so good.
Yeah.
In our own minds, they're good. But like, but it's kind of like we admit that it's a re-pitch.
Yeah.
We're like, it's like, we're not pretending like you've never seen this before, like a new set of clients, like let's slide this one in the stack. But we're like, just wanted to bring this one back because we're going to think of some new ones, but like we still have a lot of heart for this.
Do they bite?
No.
Will you ever pitch something to a client that you pitch to another client?
No, because I mean, there's usually such like different specs or budgets,
it would have to be so similar,
deliverables, and it's it really is hard to retrofit. There are moments where we'll go back to a stack of ideas and like that will inspire a new thing. Especially when you work on the same brand for years, it's sort of like, okay, what was that thing that we thought of for this other assignment like a few years ago? And you go back into your archive, and it's really fun to like pull up your old work. But then you also realize like, oh my gosh, so much has changed. And this doesn't feel fresh anymore, or
definitely.
So I'd like to think you could recycle, but it doesn't work out.
Totally. Do you ever work with a director more than once? Like maybe you work with a director on one campaign and you'll work with them on the second iteration of that campaign or on a completely different campaign for a different client? Or do you like to work with the new director every
We've worked
time?
with the same photographer a couple times for different brands, just because we like know the process. It's like pretty seamless, like know what to expect. But with directors, we haven't done that. Is what I'm trying to think, and I don't think we've done that. We get kind of like just like idea greedy, you know, where you're like, wait, what's it like a different person gonna, even though the first thing was so great, but like what's a newer take on it or a different take. Although I do love the idea of like, I think there are some brands where that makes a lot of sense, especially if you have like the same characters, the same it's sort of like a series, like it's a series of ads that like all need to feel cohesive. It's like you know what you're signing up for, especially if the first one was successful. But we don't really have that like in our brands. Like we don't have that like story that goes through every single campaign. It's usually like a new story every time.
Makes sense. Are there any like dream brands that you would love to work with?
I don't know. I mean, I love like certain categories of like stuff. I love women's health. I love wellness. Like like I said before, like maybe like a fun like new mom brand or I would say nothing like specific. Like I'm always down to work on like something in that world.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything like you're looking for like in like new partners that you're working with that like you feel whether they've like innovated to a new level or like older partners that have been around for a long time just aren't able to do anymore?
When you say partners, do you mean like
production partners?
Production partners. I can't think of any examples of that. I mean, I guess we assume like during COVID, of course, it was like, are you capable of like doing a really seamless live stream? Like, is that something you're set up for? Like that would just be sort of a minor technical question. No, I can't think of.
Or are you seeing like any shifts in the industry where it's like heading towards a new type of like style or direction? Like the past couple of years, I feel like the whole style's been like the VFX transitions through everything.
No, like I mean, I love working on like colorful brands, like just like vibrancy and color and life, and I feel like the mood of ads should be like happy when the world is sad, you know, like it should bring like joy and fun and color. But in terms of like trends or visual trends, I'm not sure. I love things that are like in the moment, you know, like that's the best is like agencies or brands that can turn something around so fast when something's happening in culture. And I think it's harder when you're at a bigger agency, bigger brands. There's so much, there's so many layers to go through, so many levels of approvals. Like you just cannot move as fast.
Yeah.
So I love that type of advertising. I think it's just like so smart, so fun.
Yeah.
You don't think too hard about it. It's just in the moment.
Yeah. This is something that's hot right now. Let's be quick and nimble and make it happen. Get it out there.
It's like I'm not necessarily like an ad industry person. I would say that I get most of my like what's going on in the industry from friends who work at agencies, just like what's going on with your work and talking like casually about it. But especially also like since I am like full-time at Razorfish for so long, I'm not as like, oh, what's going on in the world. Like I'm so like insulated in my little bubble. But what do you guys think?
In terms of like
styles that are feeling like
I think one of the things that Jake touched on, like transitions with VFX is like a big thing that we're seeing a lot of. I think there's been a lot, and you mentioned it earlier when you guys are doing research for directors, is I think there's a big ask these days for directors with music video experience, music video background, which is really cool because we did start as a music video shop back in the day. So some of our directors do lean like music video style.
Unreal Engine. Yeah,
Unreal Engine is something that we were early in on, and we've done a lot with at this point. That's been really fun. And it's just like a really cutting edge technology to work with.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like whenever there's like cultural movements, it's kind of more like what you're saying, where it's like being on trend and just like being able to hit it at that mark when it's happening, and like can you adopt that quickly to show that your brand is like culturally relevant and knows what's going on and could be involved in whatever is going on. Definitely like so much social content.
Yeah.
Millions of social content. And then I just think whatever new technologies are coming out, people are very interested in and just want to be able to like play with and experiment with and see, is it just like a fad, or is this something that like we'd actually adopt and be like using moving forward, and how could that play in? I feel like there's a lot of like cool AR stuff too
Yeah.
that's going on. Like Snap does a lot of really cool stuff like that.
Yeah, we're doing some cool AR AI stuff coming up, which is really fun. It's like cool to do something different. I also think content lives and dies so quick these days because there's so much of it. So it's like, how do you make stuff that stands out and really gets people's attention and like stays alive for longer than the traditional stuff?
When you asked me about like the style of spots, I actually was thinking, and I was going to ask you guys this, but maybe it's more of like for the visual effects artist, but do you feel like you're getting asked for less beauty cleanup like in post? Like, do brands generally, like, they want to see like the real self of the talent? Or
I think it depends on the brand. I think when you're working with like a beauty brand, like, yes, well, it depends on the beauty brand, because some beauty brands want to be more like real, you know,
And who's the talent, if it's like celebrity talent or not.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it kind of depends. It depends on the brand and the talent. But yeah, some brands, I feel like people are trying to be more real, you know, less.
Yeah.
Or make
fake.
the beauty look more real.
Yeah.
Beauty cleanup.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, just make it look real.
Yeah.
It could be fake,
But
but
clean
it's
it
still
up.
real.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. What are some risks or obstacles that come up, and how do you work through and solve those things?
I mean, it's inevitable that an obstacle is going to come up, and like there's going to be some crazy thing that happens. It's just the nature of production.
Yeah,
You know,
variables.
because everything's, nothing's perfect. It's just so many variables, like that is just expected. I feel like we've dealt with anything from like a natural disaster on set and like floods and power outages to like our talent getting sick like right before the shoot, and having to like find another person. So those are like bigger like upsets in a project. But even just like the brief changing, like you have to pivot really fast. You get really invested in your ideas, and then you have to just like throw them away and kind of reset and do something totally different. I just feel like there's so many challenges that come up in our job, and problem solving is like, it's just part of it. I think the biggest thing that's happened for me, like the biggest obstacle, was the pandemic and that shift from that office life to that in-home life, and how to figure that out. And that was like, even though my day-to-day was just normal-ish, like in terms of our projects, we had to kind of figure out how that, we're not going on shoots, like how's that working? But also like just getting used to the nature of like working from home. But I think if you have a team that you trust, that you like, that you have fun with, that you feel supported by, like that is the only thing you really need in order to figure all these obstacles or roadblocks. Or like if it's people you want to like, okay, let's just like get in the trenches, like figure this out, then nothing seems too scary, really. Because I think there's every project is going to have one of those things that happens.
For sure. Do you have a process for maybe when you get writer's block? Like what you do? Do you go out on a walk? Or
yeah, I think taking a step back is huge. Going on a walk definitely helps. Sometimes I actually like watch music videos a lot, to be honest, just to get out of my head a little bit. Or I'll just, open a blank piece of paper and just write like, just type like, think of an idea now, like stream of consciousness, like what comes out, like, there's just different ways you can kind of play with it. But ultimately, I think taking a step back is the best way to reset.
Do you get creative inspiration from your daughter? Just getting my mind, because kids are so weird and they do the craziest things.
Weird. She's so weird. She says the weirdest things. But yeah, I mean, even like just like doing art with, like doing stuff with your hands, I think is actually a really good way to get out of a creative block, especially when you're just sitting at your desk all day. Mm-hmm. Even though it's not related to what you're thinking about, I think just our bodies are like, it's nice to just focus on something tactile, and then your mind kind of like, I don't know, has the ability to reset. But yeah, my daughter, like children's books are insane. Like children's like shows are nuts. The way she looks at the world is so innocent and beautiful. She definitely, she's constantly wants to play, and that kind of like helps you get out of your head a little bit. You're like, oh, I have this little person here I could like, do some imaginative play with that helps get you out of your own head. She's definitely like a writer's block antidote.
That's cool. I feel like you take a lot of influence from music videos, it sounds like.
Yes, I've always
love that.
Been so obsessed with music videos. Like, I would
really
just,
cool.
Even when I was a project manager, it's like just watching music videos like all day.
Yeah.
It just transports you.
Are there any like music video directors that you love?
I'm just thinking of like some, like, or even just ads that are music driven are so inspirational.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the first ad that I fell in love with was that Sony Bravia ad with the bouncy balls.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The artist, I forgot his name. What's his name?
I can't remember.
The guitarist like playing in the background.
The bouncy balls are like so like, it's so famous.
So famous.
Yeah.
And I was like 18. I saw that and I was like, oh my God, this is like beautiful and amazing. And it did feel like a music video.
Yeah. I do think like visuals are such a key part in the ads that we're making, but like connecting the sound and music to it is just as important. And like in helping bring it to life, bringing these visuals to life,
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times we have an idea that's based on a song and it doesn't, I don't know. I think licensing like an amazing piece of music is like, can take like the entire production budget sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily like an option you have a lot. But I think it can be so powerful. Like I love that.
What do you think it takes to create brands, campaigns, and projects that resonate with today's generation and culture?
I think that the people who make the ads are the people who use the brands and are the brand. I think that that's like the strongest work is going to come from those people. Yeah, I think that's why like so many amazing startups happened like in the last 15 years. Built by millennials, but it was because they found something in the market that they themselves like were missing, and then they created a company to like fulfill that need and built these amazing brands because it was something that they felt really passionate about and connected to. So I think, just like a younger generation is gonna just make amazing, beautiful stuff.
You hit the nail on the head. That's the whole reason we started the company. It's like we noticed, over 7 years ago, prior to starting the company, that there was like a missing gap in the industry of creating content for today's generation by today's generation, and that everybody that was creating the content was not the current generation.
Yeah.
So it was like there's something missing there, and we're like, let's fill that gap, and it's kind of what we've been doing the past 7 years.
Love it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. It's awesome. Cool. Good stuff.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank
It was
you
great
guys
having
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
It's so nice chatting.
Yes, that was great.
Cool.